Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to our virtual classroom. This was going to be the first of two videos having to do with today's lesson. Today's lesson being, put it here, 5-1, which is multiplying fractions. And so if for some reason you didn't get the notes, I highly encourage you that you go to OneNote and have the notes ready or just follow along. Please pause the video at any point if I'm going too fast. And rewind or pause it as you're copying certain things so you can just pay attention as we're going over this lesson. So this is our 12th lesson. And again, it is 5-1 multiplying fractions. Now, when multiplying fractions, ladies and gentlemen, there are two methods that I want to show you. Method one being the most simple, and really method one being the foundation of both of the methods that we're going to be looking at. And so here in method one, we are given these two fractions, 3/4 times 2/3. Now, before we continue, I do want you to notice that both of these are proper fractions. Both of these are proper fractions, meaning that the numerator is less than the denominator. The numerator is less than the denominator. So if I was to break this multiplication problem down, I have a certain number. It just happens to be 3/4, and I'm multiplying that number times a proper fraction. Okay, a proper fraction being a fraction that is less than 1. Notice that I have two parts out of the 3 that I need to make a whole. All right, so for now, just kind of keep that in mind. We're going to revisit that in a second. But yes, I have a number. In this case, that number being the fraction 3/4, being multiplied times a proper fraction. I have a number being multiplied times a number that is less than 1. I have less than 1 whole. And we're going to see what happens when we do that. Okay, so when multiplying fractions in this first method, it is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, when we multiply fractions, all you have to do is multiply the numerator with the numerator. So in this case, 3 times 2. And then we're going to multiply the denominator times the denominator, 4 times 3. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. It is that simple. 3 times 2 is 6. And 4 times 3 is 12. So technically, my answer is 6/12. That is the most basic way to look at multiplying fractions. You multiply the numerator with the numerator and the denominator with the denominator. Notice that this is not cross multiplication. Cross multiplication is what we do when we're comparing two fractions, when we want to see whether one is greater than the other. That is not what we have here. When multiplying fractions, you just multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. In essence, what we have here is this. We have one fraction where we're multiplying 3 times 2 on the numerators, and that's going to give us our numerator of 6. And we're multiplying 4 times 3 in the denominator, 4 times 3. And that gives us our denominator of 12. Now, while 6/12 is indeed technically our answer, that is not simplified. So we need to simplify our answer, which means that we need to get that same fraction, but in the simplest form possible. So in this case, I can divide both 6 and 12 by 6. So you always have to divide by the same number. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 12 divided by 6 is 2, leaving me with the simplest form of this fraction, which is 1/2. Now, another way that I could have done that, let's say that you didn't think of dividing by 6, but you saw that 6 and 12 are both even numbers, so I can divide both of these by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and then I can divide both of these by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, so I get the same answer. I get 1/2 once again. Either way, I get the same answer. As long as you're dividing by the same number until you can't divide anymore, you're going to get to your simplest form. Easy enough. Now, this is where I want you to pay really close attention. All right, again, we multiplied it. We multiplied 3 times 2. We multiplied 4 times 3. That gave us 6/12. And that's, oh, sorry, that should be a 2. And then we simplified it and we got 1/2. So our answer is 1/2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we multiplied 3/4 by the proper fraction, 2/3, we got 1/2. Now, why is that important? Well, typically when we multiply, we think of things as getting bigger, right? We think of things as getting bigger, like 3 times 4. So we start with 3, multiply by 4, and we get 12. 12 is obviously bigger than 3. 5 times 2. 5, we multiply it by 2, becomes 10. 10 is obviously greater than 5 than what we started with. However, notice what happened here. When I multiplied 3/4 by 2/3, it gave me 1/2. Ladies and gentlemen, what's greater? 3/4, what I started with, or 1/2, what I ended up with? In this case, we can see that 1/2 is actually less. This is less than what I started with. Think about it. 3/4, if I draw a pizza, of course, and if I shade in 3 out of the 4 pieces that I need to make the whole, 1, 2, 3, that's 3/4. And I make another pizza that is the exact same size, but cut this one into 2 pieces so that I can shade in 1 out of the 2, 1/2. What is more, 3/4 or 1/2? Well, 3/4 is obviously more than 1/2. So that means that my answer, my product, was less than what I started with. I started with 3/4 and I ended up with less, even though I multiplied. That's interesting. Because again, usually when we multiply, we think of things as getting more or getting bigger. But in this case, when I multiply 3/4 by 2/3, which is a number that is less than 1, it became smaller. Okay. Well, let's see what that is about. Remember, 2/3 is less than 1. All right. If this was 1, it would say 3, 3. We have 3 out of 3 pieces, but we don't. We only have 2 out of 3 pieces. And when I multiply 3/4 by this proper fraction, it became smaller. That is because, ladies and gentlemen, let me minimize this so that I can show you. Whenever you multiply a number by something that is less than 1, things will get smaller. Let me show you what I mean by that. All right, let's say we have the number 2. We have the number 2. And if we multiply 2 times 1 whole, that is equal to 2, right? Because any number times 1 will always equal itself. So 100 times 1 is 100. 1.2 times 1 is 1.2. Any number, even a fraction, 3/4 times 1 will give you 3/4. Any number times 1 will always equal itself. Okay, now if we multiply a number, let's say we start off with number 2, times something that is greater than 1, it's going to get bigger. 2 times 3, 3 is bigger than 1, is 6. 6 is greater than 2, right? 2 times 4, 4 is greater than 1. That's going to give me 8. My answer is greater than what I started with. And look, even if I use a number that is only slightly greater than 1, 2 times 1.1, for example, 2 times 1.1, when we multiply that, that's going to give me 2.2. Never mind how I got that exact answer, but 2 times 1.1 is 2.2. Is 2.2 greater than what I started with? Yes. 2.2, my answer, my product is greater than the 2 that I started with when I multiply 2 by a number that is greater than 1. That is always going to be true, ladies and gentlemen. When you multiply a number by something that is greater than 1, even if it's only slightly greater than 1, your answer, your product will be greater than what you started with. It's almost like the 2 got bigger. Well, what happens if we multiply a number by something that is less than 1, like 0.9? Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, your answer is always going to be smaller than what you started with. In fact, 2 times 9/10 is 1.8. When I multiplied 2 by a number that is slightly less than 1, it gave me a number that is slightly less than what I started with. That is always going to be true. And so that explains why when I multiplied a fraction, or any number really, in this case, 3/4, when I multiplied it by something that was less than what I started with, in this case, what did I multiply by? It was 2/3. So notice that is less than 1. It gave me 1/2 after I simplified it, and this is less than what I started with. You're going to see that happen all the time, and I'll keep referring to that. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but you're going to see that over and over again. Hence why down here I wrote the product is less than the factors. the product is less than the factors. Notice that if I flip this around, if I had done 2/3, I start off with 2/3 and I multiply that by 3/4, my answer is going to be the same, and the logic remains. When I start off with 2/3 and I multiply it by 3/4, which is less than 1, my answer is 1/2. 1/2 is less than 2/3. It's almost like 2/3 became smaller because 3/4 is less than 1. Same logic. All right, so method 1. I just multiply the numerator with numerator, denominator with denominator. Then I simplify and I get my final answer. Pretty easy. Let's go into method 2. Now, some of you guys are going to look at method 2 and be confused by it. And that's going to be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to use method 2. Method 2 requires a little bit more skill and flexibility with the numbers. But if you can do it, you're going to find that method 2 is actually in many ways makes the problem easier because you don't have to simplify. Not at the end, at least. Let me show you what I mean. And guys, if method 2 is just confusing, you can ignore it. Just stick to method 1. But I want to show you this because I think it's going to help a lot. Same exact problem. 3/4 times 2/3. I'm taking 3/4 and I'm multiplying it by 2/3. Even if I already know my answer, let's go ahead and do it. Now remember, this is the same thing as just multiplying 3 times 2, hence what I have over here. We have on the numerators 3 times 2. And on my denominator, I have 4 times 3. 4 times 3 on the denominator, right? And so I have 3 times 2 and 4 times 3. Now I'm looking down here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, notice how I have a 3 on the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. They don't have to be diagonal. As long as I have a 3 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator, this matters. What method 2 says is that whenever I have the same number on the numerator and the same number on the denominator, and it's just multiplication, it's just multiplication. There's no addition, division, or subtraction. Again, when we have the same number on the numerator and on the denominator, you can cross out those numbers. Right? So I have a 3 on the numerator, I have a 3 on the denominator, therefore I can cross them out. Now I have a 2 on the numerator. Do I have another 2 in the denominator? Now it seems like I don't, except for the fact that, remember, it's just multiplication, and I can express 4 as 2 times 2. Have I changed the problem? No, I have not, because 4 times 3 is 12, right? 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12. It's still the exact same thing. So you can see that hidden inside the 4, if you will, we have 2 2's, 2 times 2. So yes, I have a 2 in the numerator, and yes, I do have a 2 on the denominator. I'm going to cross one of those and then the 2 in the numerator. They match up. What do I have left over, ladies and gentlemen? Well, when I cross things out, they're not zeros. That just makes them into a 1. It's like 3 divided by 3 is 1. So this is a 1, this is a 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. And right here, all I have is a 2. And 2 times 1 is just 2. My answer is 1/2. Notice how I did not have to simplify at the end. That is my final answer, and it is simplified. Let me show you again, just for those of you who are a bit confused by it. So again, we have 3 times 2 over 4 times 3. I have a 3 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator, so I cross those out. I have a 2 in the numerator, and I have 2 2's in the denominator because of the 4. 2 times 2 is 4, so cross one of those out on the denominator and then on the top. And then on the denominator, I have a 2 left over, and on the numerator, 1 times 1 is 1, and that is my final answer. Now, even if you hadn't broken down the 4, notice how it's still simpler. I see a 3, I see a 3, cross those out. I'm left with a 2 in the numerator and a 4 in the denominator. That is still simpler than having to simplify 6/12. I can just divide both of these by 2. Even by crossing out just one number, it makes the multiplication problem so much simpler. So you don't have to go all the way, but obviously, if you cross out all the common factors, that's going to leave you with the simplest form. Okay, and that's method number 2. Let's try another example just to see both of these. So let's try method 1 here on this example on top. I have 3/4 times 1/3. By the way, notice that I am multiplying 3/4 by a proper fraction, by something that is less than 1. So I expect my product, my answer, to be less than the 3/4 that I started with. Let's go ahead and multiply. Method number 1, 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. And then to simplify, I can divide both of those by 3. And my final answer is 1/4. Is 1/4 less than 3/4? Yes. So it follows when I multiply 3/4 by something that is less than 1, in this case, a proper fraction, 1 out of 3, it gave me 1/4, which is less than 3/4. Good. Now, as simple as that was, look how simple the second method is. Remember, if I have the same number in the numerator and denominator, you can just cross them out. That's it. My answer is 1/4. My answer is 1/4. That is it. As long as you are just multiplying, you have the same number in the numerator and the same number in the denominator, you can cross those numbers out, and then whatever's left over is going to be your answer. Simple enough. Now, using that method, in this problem, both methods were pretty simple, but let me see, and let's do another problem. In this one where method 2 is clearly simpler than method 1. Okay, I'm going to cross all this out just so that we can just take it slowly. Let's take it slowly. So we're starting off with 3/8 and we're multiplying it by a proper fraction. So again, I expect my answer to be less than 3/8. I expect my answer to be less than 3/8 because I'm starting with 3/8. I'm multiplying it by something less than 1, in this case 4/9. And so I expect my answer to be less than the 3/8 that I started with. Let's go ahead and do this using method number 1 first. So 3 times 4 is 12. 8 times 9, assuming you know your multiplication table as well, you should know that is 72. Now I have to simplify that. Unless you're really good with your multiplications, you're probably going to struggle at this point. They're both even, so let's divide by 2. And that's going to give me 72 divided by 2. I know what it is, but if you don't, then you have to do 72 divided by 2, and then you eventually figure out that it's 36. By now, hopefully you know that both 6 and 36 have 6 in common, so I can divide both of these by 6. And eventually I get down to 1/6, assuming that I didn't make any mistakes, which I did not. First, let's look at the answer. 1/6. Is 1/6 less than 3/8? Well, let's compare them using the butterfly method. 6 times 3 is 18. 8 times 1 is 8. 3/8, what I started with, is indeed greater, so it follows. Yes, when I multiplied 3/8 by something that is less than 1, my answer was less than what I started with. Okay, so not too bad, but again, the simplifying process can be very intimidating. Let's do the second method to see if it makes a difference. All right, so here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still multiplying 3 times 4 and then 8 times 9. However, before I multiply, I'm going to cross out anything that I have in common. So I have a 3 in the numerator. Do we have a 3 in the denominator? It doesn't look like it, except that we see that 9 is actually the same thing. I can rewrite that as 3 times 3, right? Have I changed the answer? No, because 8 times 3 is 24, times 3 is 72. So it's still the exact same thing. I just rewrote 9 as 3 times 3. Well, what about the 4? Do I have a 4 in the denominator? I do. I can express this 8 as 4 times 2. And again, I haven't changed the problem. 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24, times 3 is 72. The problem is still exactly the same. So now I can pair these up. I have a 3 in the numerator. I have a 3 in the denominator. I can cross those out. Doesn't matter which one you do, as long as it's just one of them. I have a 4 in the numerator. I have a 4 in the denominator. I can cross those out. Do I have anything else in common? I do not. So here we go. I have a 3. I'm sorry, this is now a 1. So 1 times 1 is just 1. And here I have a 2 and a 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. And that is my final answer, 1/6. Notice how I did not have to simplify anything. I did not have to simplify anything. That may have seemed kind of complicated, but it really wasn't. Notice 9 is the same thing as 3 times 3. Cross out one of the 3's. 8 is 4 times 2. Cross out the 4's. I have a 1 left over on top, and 2 times 3 is 6. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't even have to multiply 8 times 9. So for me, I always do method number 2. It's easier for me, even as a math teacher. All right, regardless of what method you use, that is our answer. Let's go to this next example. None of these examples are part of your homework, though this is 5C from your textbook. But we have 2/5 times 4, just 4. Is 4 greater than 1? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is greater than 1. This is 4 wholes. So I expect my answer to be greater than 2/5. I expect it to get bigger because I'm multiplying 2/5 by something that is greater than 1. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this seems kind of odd because I thought we're supposed to multiply the numerator with numerator, but this is just a whole number. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever you have a whole number, like the number 4 or the number 7 or the number 129, you can always write a whole number or really an integer as a fraction by just putting it over 1. 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. 7 is the same thing as 7 over 1. 129 is the same thing as 129 over 1. It doesn't matter. That over 1 is always there. You just don't see it. We don't always write it down because it's redundant. Remember that fraction means division. Well, notice what happens when I divide. 4 divided by 1 is 4. 7 divided by 1 is 7. 129 divided by 1 is 129. So it doesn't make a difference. And so we just have to remember that whenever you have a whole number, that is the numerator actually, and it has a denominator of 1. So when I multiply these together, I see 2 times 4 is equal to 8, and 5 times 1 is equal to 5. That is my answer technically. Is 8/5 more than 2/5? Yes, so it follows. I multiplied it by something, I multiplied 2/5 by something greater than 1, and it gave me 8/5. Awesome, which is more. Now, the only problem is that this is an improper fraction. And because it's improper, while that is, I can't simplify that more. The way that I'm going to simplify this is by rewriting that improper fraction as a mixed number. You guys should know how to do that. Remember that fraction means division. So let's go ahead and divide 8 into 5. 5 goes into 8 one whole time. So my answer is going to be 1 whole. My denominator is still going to be 5. And let's see what my remainder is. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. So we have a remainder of 3. So my final answer on Schoology is going to be 1 3/5. For the most part, ladies and gentlemen, whenever we end up with an improper fraction, you must put it back. You must put it into a mixed number and make sure that it is simplified. Make sure that the fraction inside the mixed number is in lowest terms. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully this wasn't too much. I hope you found this video helpful. There's going to be a second video where I go into some of the problems in our assignment, and hopefully you will find that helpful as well. So with that in mind, I will see you in our next video.